Greetings, I'm Zeb Sanders III. Hopefully you viewed and understood my first video, The Aquarian Era Began 1992, The Indisputable Evidence, Discovery of an Unalterable Universal Law, in which I prove that the planet is being recreated in accord with the seven-stage divine intervention of 1992, a universal law that is transitioning us from one stage of evolution, the Piscean Age, into a new and unique dispensation, the Aquarian Era. In that video, I utilized data sets from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to demonstrate that global average surface temperatures from 1998 to 2016 conform to the first four stages of the seven-stage divine intervention, thereby proving the existence of the universal law and consequently that global warming is being consciously and intelligently utilized as an essential and integral component to transform the earth, as well as to warn us to change habits and practices that contribute to the excess warming that threatens our existence. As I state in that video, the pattern of global warming is but one category of evidence proving the existence of the seven-stage universal law. Today, I offer you a second category of evidence. This category illustrates humanity's conformance to the process. Moreover, as the pattern of global temperatures represent the transformation of the earth, the pattern of human conformance reveals the transformation of the social order, the creation of a new world. As I prophesied 21 years ago in my first book, And Now There Is Aquarius, and again in my second book, 17 Years Past, When Jesus' Kingdom Came, Western civilization is being broken down as part of the transformation of the social order. Its demise will ultimately result in the liberation of the peoples it has longed and continues to oppress. It is the purpose of this video to demonstrate this demise and exaltation progressing in accord with the first four stages of the seven-stage universal law. The universal law subduing of nature, as witnessed in the conformity of both global average surface temperatures and the human social order to its first four stages, demonstrates not only its existence and dominion, but that the law carries an intent of design. There is an intelligence underlying it. This planetary transfiguration is being orchestrated. This intent or intelligence can be witnessed particularly at the second stage, at which point it has made a decision and presents a seed idea of what is to manifest in its completed form by the end of the seventh stage. In the case of the Earth, it shows global warming to indicate the new environment it is creating for the planet. Global warming also serves as a means by which it is transforming the planet. It also operates to direct our attention to those practices we must correct or abandon in order for humanity to survive the transition and to thrive upon the new earth. Regarding humanity, this intelligence is revealed in the people it chooses due to their particular intrinsic character or makeup to carry out specific functions at specific stages of the process. Over and above that, an intent of design and intelligence, having formulated a seven-stage transfiguration compelling a planetary metamorphosis, is revealed in its attention to the details of human affairs. Its compassion for those long-suffering, acknowledgement of their prayers and request for intercession, and its recognition of the evolution of their souls under the refinement of persecution. Additionally, this intelligence displays its attention to the details of human affairs by its direct response to those ideologies, actions, and behaviors that created, sustain, and maintain a depraved and vicious world. The overall intent of this divine intervention is to cleanse the earth and rid humanity of its corruptions by way of reconfiguring the planet and reorganizing human society to accord with divine will. This intelligent response, this divine intervention marks the outstanding difference between the 7-stage universal law I reveal and other universal laws such as gravity. For the agnostic and atheist, this intent should prove the existence of an intelligence and power that oversees the evolution of its creation and which intercedes to exact justice and restore to order that which its creation perverts. Before I share this second category of evidence, I will reacquaint you with the descriptions of the first 4 stages of the transition process. Following the descriptions, I'll then demonstrate human conformity to the law beginning at the stage we presently inhabit, the 4th stage, the stage of transition. This will conclude this presentation, part 1 of the 3-part video. Part 2 will demonstrate human conformity to the 2nd and 3rd stages of the 7-stage universal law. At the 2nd stage, I'll reveal a seed idea, source's intent for human society. The 3rd stage will demonstrate the seed idea germinating, gradually unfolding in its early phases of coming into being. And in part 3, I'll conclude by informing you of 2 things. First, what we must do now in order to work with Source to create a world in alignment with its will. And second, I'll reveal the ultimate expression of Source's intent, the 7th stage realization of the 2nd stage seed idea. This 7-stage universal law transitioning us from one age into another can rightly be viewed as the 7 stages of creation because, as is being demonstrated in our daily lives across the planet, the warming of global temperatures, the changing of climates, the increase in what at this time may be taken as abnormal weather conditions, more frequent and intensified thunderstorms, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, heat waves, and droughts, the restructuring of land masses as ice sheets melt, as the ocean waters warm, and as the seas rise and the coasts flood, and the overall reconfiguration of the geography of the planet all conspire to create a new Earth. This planetary transformation, of course, impacts the ability of the Earth's inhabitants to live, survive, and thrive. We are indeed witnessing the creation of a new Earth in 7 stages. Further, we are being called upon to change our destructive habits and to clean our home if we intend to continue on the planet. Along with this earthly transformation, we are undergoing a fundamental transformation of the human social order, a radical restructuring initiated and commandeered by Source. Consequently, not only is a new Earth being created, but a new people and a new world. We are indeed witness to a new creation in 7 stages. The first stage of this process, simply enough, is the stage of inception or beginning. Source intervened in earthly affairs in 1992, inaugurating the Aquarian era. Here note that stages last for several years. The 2nd stage, the defining, which began in 1998, is the point at which a model is presented of that which is to be materialized by the 7th stage of the process. This model can take the form of an idea, a physical representation, whatever it needs to be. In my book, I write, at this point in the process, the tone for the era is set. The idea or nature of its energies is presented, however abstractly. The 3rd stage is the point of generation, thus its name, generating. The model presented at the 2nd stage begins the process of coming into being. As it does so, and in order to do so, it begins to disintegrate the existing form it is to replace. In my book, I write, the idea once defined is then sent forth to be brought into existence. At this 3rd stage, the existing organism on which it is acting is subtly but visibly broken down. The defined idea acts as an adjutant, producing a state of high activity, excitement, unrest within the existing organism, effectively and efficiently decomposing it, freeing its components. The 4th stage, as its name declares, is the point of transition. It began 2016. Of this stage, I write, this is the point of crisis, the point at which the disintegration process of the existing organism reaches its climax in a spontaneous and instantaneous acceleration of the vibratory rate of the organism, serving to sever the binding agents that hold the present entity intact, releasing the life force in a violent ejaculation resulting in the liberation of the constituent parts. The life force is actually only partially released. After the first ejaculation, the vibratory rate of the organism slows down, the initial outburst having served to awaken the organism. Then there is a second surge in the vibratory rate with the organism conscious of the impending release of the life force. It is at this point that the ejaculation must be arrested, stopped. For if it is not, then the result will be the complete disintegration, obliteration of the organism. Now that I've reacquainted you with the descriptions of the stages, or of stages 2, 3, and 4, let us delve further into the evidence proving human conformity to these stages. In the new day of our Lord, the era of Aquarius, my second written communication of 1992 concerning my revelation, included as the opening treatise of my 1998 book, I write, "The year 2016 will be the crisis point in the first 30 years of the era. It will be characterized by a great and intense radiation of energy or life force. It is not for me to say how this radiation of life force will express itself, but I do know that it will declare itself throughout the earth as it will be the result of cosmic cause. It will assume many forms. This concussive liberation of energy, which will be the result of an increased vibratory frequency, will mean death for some and the promise of a more abundant life due to a new orientation in consciousness that it will demand for others. With regard to global warming, this great and intense radiation of energy would express itself in 2016 as the hottest year ever recorded, according to both NASA and the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Regarding human conformity, this concussive liberation of energy expressed itself in the utter shock and bewilderment at the victory and election of Donald John Trump as the 45th President of the United States of America. That this indeed was a concussive event, a violent jarring, a shock, we need but recall, if not our own, then the majority of Americans' reaction to the news. Or we can view the incredulous facial expressions of stunned media reporters, analysts, political experts, many while acknowledging a very narrow path to the presidency for Trump the night of the election, nevertheless, like most Americans, concluded his path practically non-existent. The actual result of the election driving many of these pundits to openly profess they would no longer predict or be so certain of their analysis and derived conclusions. In lieu of our personal recollections, we can go directly to the headlines. Note the words used in many of the headlines to denote concussive. Words such as stunning, shock, upset, oh my God, the hurricane. Can you see the accuracy of the law? This is sources work. Yet our reaction to Trump's election is but the initial presentation of the fourth stage energy. As I pronounced in my 1998 description of the fourth stage, this is the point of crisis, the point at which the disintegration process of the existing organism reaches its climax in a spontaneous and instantaneous acceleration in the vibratory rate of the organism, serving to sever the binding agents that hold the present entity intact, releasing the life force in a violent ejaculation resulting in the liberation of the constituent parts. The life force is actually only partially released. After the first ejaculation, the vibratory rate of the organism slows down, the initial outburst having served to awaken the organism. Please note that by the fourth stage, the disintegration process has already been underway. At this point in the process, the complete destruction of the entity is at hand. Hence the name of the stage, transition. In 1998, I identified the existing organism being deconstructed as Western civilization. Western civilization is a Piscean construct. This being so, it must disintegrate its organism according to divine law, so that that of it which is salvageable may pass into the era of Aquarius to be joined into a totally new and unique organism of Aquarian origin. The election of Donald Trump awakened many to the impending demise of Western civilization. True to my 1998 declaration that the fourth stage marks the point of crisis, across the nation and in many parts of the world, Trump's election erupted in editorials, commentaries, opinion pieces, and articles declaring his victory a crisis, signifying the end of Western liberal democracy. Western liberal democracy is a system of governance that provides structure and order to our nation. It stipulates that we are a nation governed by a constitution that divides the powers of the state into legislative, executive, and judicial branches. It ensures basic rights such as freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and rule of law. It requires fair and free elections, guarantees religious liberty, and demands separation of church and state. Western liberal democracies, plural, refers to those nations, primarily the countries of Western Europe, with similar values and forms of government. And more specifically, it refers to those nations under American influence and military protection. The American world order. The United States being the present incarnation of Western civilization. Indeed, Trump's 2016 election positioned him at the point at which the disintegration process of Western civilization reaches its climax, the fourth stage of transition. Moreover, Donald Trump, by character, demeanor, and action, is the spontaneous and instantaneous acceleration of the vibratory rate, the sign of disintegration in progress, the vehicle by which destruction is carried out. His spontaneous and instantaneous disruptive nature reveals itself through his choice and use of tweets as a primary mode of communication. Further, it asserts itself through the frequency of this communication for the purposes of conveying impulsive, often reckless commentary and content. His spontaneous and destructive nature is witnessed in his unprovoked genius and boundless capacity for spouting off-the-cuff blatant lies and improvised fictions, as well as through his aptitude for stirring up conflict and controversy almost daily. It is also witnessed in his tendency to make bold, rash threats and promises, many times later backing down. Trump's disruptive nature expresses itself both nationally and globally, affecting the disintegration both of the United States and its world order, per my prophecy and the energies of the fourth stage. Nationally, Trump is undermining the democratic institutions that make up and support the United States' infrastructure. He denounces the press as fake news, the opposition party, and declared 80% of the institution the enemy of the people. He has sided with autocrats, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, against United States intelligence. Trump characterizes the judicial branch of government as, quote, a joke and a laughingstock, unquote. He says they're politically biased, slow, weak, inefficient, incompetent, inept, and is working against the security, well-being, and interest of the nation. Further, he has instructed the courts on how they should perform their duties, overstepping the boundaries set by the Constitution to avert dictatorship by the separation of powers governing the nation into three distinct branches. Again, the executive, legislative, and judicial. Moreover, Trump has condemned the judiciary, proclaiming, quote, our legal system is broken. Responding to the president's attacks on the judicial branch, spurred by their potential to arouse public distrust and possibly violence, the Brennan Center for Justice at New York University School of Law warns, "This threatens our entire system of government. The courts are bulwarks of our Constitution and laws, and they depend on the public to respect their judgments and on officials to obey and enforce their decisions. Separation of powers is not a threat to democracy. It is the essence of democracy." Again, this threatens our entire system of government. Yes, he does, as he must. To tear apart America is Trump's function as the human embodiment of the fourth stage energies. Further evincing an intelligence that selects the perfect representatives to carry out the functions of a particular stage during a specific period of time, Trump's America First policy is a perfect expression of the disintegrative energies of the fourth stage aimed at dismantling Western civilization as represented globally in the American world order. America First is a clear statement of intent to detach America from concerns beyond its borders, including the intent to abdicate American leadership of those countries and international organizations composing the American world order, an alliance forged at the end of World War II over 70 years ago. In the week leading up to Sunday, May 28, 2017, at the NATO summit attended by European leaders, President Trump refused to recommit to Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty, which states that if one of the member nations is attacked, all members will respond. NATO is one of the organizations holding the American world order of Western liberal democracies intact. Later in the same week, at the Group of Seven, or G7 summit, attended by leaders of Germany, France, Britain, Italy, Canada, and Japan, President Trump indicated he may withdraw the United States from the 2015 Paris Accord on climate change. As a result of Trump's actions and Britain's vote to exit the European Union, on May 28, 2017, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, head of Europe's largest economy, declared that Germany and the European Union, the largest group of countries composing the American world order, could no longer rely completely on America and Britain, suggesting the post-war Western alliance of liberal democracies no longer viable under American protection and leadership. In fact, she stated, "The times in which we can fully count on others are somewhat over, as I have experienced in the past few days. And so all I can say is that we Europeans must really take our destiny into our own hands. Of course, we need to have friendly relations with the United States and the UK and with other neighbors, including Russia. But we have to know that we must fight for our future on our own, for our destiny as Europeans." In essence, Merkel declared the end of the American world order and the emergence of a Europe that must stand alone, seeing to its own protection and survival due to the United States having abandoned its role as leader and protector of the Western liberal democracies. A year later, after President Trump had indeed withdrew the United States from the Paris Climate Accord on June 1st, 2017, yet endorsed NATO's Article 5 Collective Defense Agreement on June 9th, 2017, Trump withdrew the United States from the Iran nuclear deal on May 8th, 2018, an agreement restricting Iran's ability to develop a nuclear weapon in exchange for relief from sanctions that were crippling its economy. Trump's withdrawal would reimpose sanctions on Iran, even though the nation had been complying by all accounts with the restrictions imposed upon it by the signatories of the agreement. This move by Trump deepened the division between the United States and its allies. French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and British Prime Minister Theresa May issued a joint statement regretting and concerned by President Trump's decision and stressing that the deal still holds and is binding. It urged the other parties to the deal, Iran, China, Russia, and the European Union, to remain committed to its full implementation and to act in a spirit of responsibility, while urging the United States to ensure that the structures of the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, can remain intact and to avoid taking action which obstructs its full implementation by all other parties to the deal. Trump's withdrawal drew the ire of many, including our European allies. It also provoked warnings he may have initiated war. His predecessor, former President Barack Obama, issued a statement the following day counseling, without the JCPOA, the United States could eventually be left with a losing choice between a nuclear-armed Iran or another war in the Middle East. On the day after Obama's statement, May 10, 2018, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who the year before informed Germany and the European Union that it could no longer rely on Trump's America, responded to Trump's withdrawal by re-emphasizing and clarifying what could not be misunderstood. Pointing directly at the United States, she declared, "It is no longer such that the United States simply protects us, but Europe must take its destiny into its own hands. That's the task of the future." French President Emmanuel Macron, too, signaled the end of the United States leadership of the Western liberal democracy, stating, according to The Hill, "European nations should not allow other major powers, including allies, to put themselves in a situation to decide our diplomacy and security for us." However, it is an editorial dated May 11, 2018, 3 days after Trump's announcement, that puts the man, Donald Trump, into accurate focus. Noting Trump's penchant for spinning fictional narratives, casting himself as the target of women's affections, as exorbitantly rich and an expert negotiator, Klaus Brinkbaumer, senior editor of Der Spiegel, Germany's leading news magazine and the largest news magazine in Europe, in an editorial titled "Time for Europe to Join the Resistance," demonstrates that Trump's self-generated mythos does not reflect reality. Brinkbaumer states that the women Trump claims lusted after him report he was never the object of their desires, that his claim of being exorbitantly rich does not add up when compared to the actual record of his business acumen. Trump in 1990 had to be bailed out of a $295 million debt by his father in banks. And to his prowess as a negotiator, what Brinkbaumer calls the greatest myth, he concludes, Trump was never proficient in the art of the deal. He isn't curious, his preparation is non-existent, strategy and tactics are both foreign to him. Trump is only proficient in destruction, and that's what he does. This observation is in perfect accord with the fourth stage energy that Trump personifies. Note Brinkbaumer's observation of Trump's lack of preparation, strategy, and tactics, how they allude to one of Trump's most obvious and well-known characteristics, his impulsiveness, which is simply the human embodiment of the fourth stage energy I described 21 years ago as the spontaneous and instantaneous acceleration in the vibratory rate of the organism, serving to sever the binding agents that hold the present entity intact. In short, as Brinkbaumer observes, Trump is only proficient in destruction. Proving his point, and consequently that Trump is the human embodiment of the fourth stage, the senior editor continues, he backed out of the Paris Climate Agreement. In Trump's Washington, the only thing that matters is dismantling the legacy of his predecessor, Barack Obama. So Trump destroyed Obamacare and has done nothing to replace it. Now he is playing the same game on the world stage with the Iran nuclear deal. So the disintegrator in chief is true to his fourth stage function. Yet the crux of Brinkbaumer's concern and frustration, per the editorial's title, is found in the effect upon Germany and Europe of Trump's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. Brink bomb events, the West, meaning the American world order, the West as we once knew it no longer exists. Our relationship to the United States cannot currently be called a friendship and can hardly be referred to as a partnership. President Trump has adopted a tone that ignores 70 years of trust. He wants punitive tariffs and demands obedience. It is no longer a question as to whether Germany and Europe will take part in foreign military interventions in Afghanistan or Iraq. It is now about whether transatlantic cooperation on economic, foreign, and security policy even exists anymore. The answer, no. It is impossible to overstate what Trump has dismantled in the last 16 months. Europe has lost its protective power. It has lost its guarantor of joint values, and it has lost the global political influence that it was only able to exert because the United States stood by its side. And what will happen in the remaining 2.5 years or 6.5 years of Trump's leadership? There's plenty of time left for further escalation. The nations of Europe make up the greater part of the Western liberal democracies composing the American world order, a world order held together by trust and other shared values, by treaty and agreement, by cooperation on economic, foreign, and security policy, a world order that Brink Bomber concludes no longer exists due to Trump. It is impossible to overstate what Trump has dismantled in the last 16 months. 2 months later, in July of 2018, Reuters reported that German Chancellor Angela Merkel affirmed during a news conference in Berlin that she was right to say a year ago that Europe could no longer rely on the United States to impose order on the world. In her own words, we can't rely on the superpower of the United States. In accord with her conclusion and that of French President Emmanuel Macron's directive that European nations should not allow other major powers, including allies, to put themselves in a situation to decide our diplomacy and security for us, and acting upon their 2018 joint statement along with then British Prime Minister Theresa May for all remaining signatories to the Iran nuclear deal to remain committed to its full implementation. On June 10, 2019, German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas flew to Iran to meet with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani and Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif. He would announce that a European payment system had been developed by Germany, France, and Britain in order to save the Iran nuclear deal, and that it would soon be operational. This new system of trade, called Instrument in Support of Trade Exchanges, or INSTEX, was designed to circumvent the dollar-based system of the United States, which at present is the standard for most international transactions. Due to its dominance as the international currency, when Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal and reimposed sanctions on Iran, other countries were essentially blocked from doing business with Iran, thus disabling their ability to support the Iranian economy in exchange for Iran not developing a nuclear weapon, which is the crux of the Iran nuclear deal. This development of an alternative to the dollar signaled Europe's commitment to taking its destiny into its own hands and to no longer rely on the United States. It also signals a challenge to U.S. global power as represented and in part sustained by the dominance of the dollar as the currency for most international trade. In whole, this move evidences the disintegration of the American world order as motivated by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, the embodiment of the fourth stage energies of disintegration. Or to view it in another way, to see the energetic substructure of this crisis, it is the fulfilling of my 21-year-old prophecy or description of the fourth stage energies. This is the point of crisis, the point at which the disintegration process of the existing organism, Western civilization, or America and its world order, reaches its climax in a spontaneous and instantaneous acceleration in the vibratory rate, Donald Trump, of the organism, serving to sever the binding agents, common values, treaties, etc., that hold the present entity, the American world order, intact, releasing the life force, that which sustains its existence, in a violent ejaculation resulting in the liberation of the constituent parts. In this instance, the European nations led by Germany, France, and Britain. Is it becoming clearer to you now how the energies of the fourth stage are carrying out their specific function in the arena of human affairs through the agency of Donald Trump? Trump's nationalist agenda, signified by his mission statement, America First, is clearly operating to sever the ties binding the United States to its longtime allies, the Western liberal democracies that compose the American world order. In effect, it is an abdication of leadership and global influence. It is the disintegration of the American world order. It is human conformity to the fourth stage of the seven-stage universal law. What I've just presented to you is evidence of the accuracy of my prophecy, of the conformity of human society to the universal law, evidence that there is an intelligence operating to select persons with the appropriate or matching traits required to carry out the specific function or task of a particular stage of the seven-stage process. Together with global warming's conformity, I am proving that the law I reveal is indeed a universal law, recreating and transfiguring the earth, its environment, and its inhabitants. While observers of and those affected by Trump note his destructive function, understandably what isn't understood is that Trump serves a necessary purpose, source's purpose. Trump's disaggregation of America and its world system functions to release the life force, the animating spirit of Western civilization. This is necessary so that the animating principle of Source's new world order can merge into physical reality, existence. The disintegrated forces of the fourth stage, in part personified by the president of the present incarnation of Western civilization, Donald Trump, not only serve to sever the ties, the treaties, agreements, loyalty, and good faith binding those nations composing the American world order, as well as the ties binding the United States itself, but ultimately, as Source's new kingdom comes to reign, these severed ties will liberate those peoples oppressed by and long subjugated to America's white superior, black inferior caste system, most particularly Black and Indian peoples. This is the positive aspect of Trump's destruction. However, this destructive element must be halted at the appropriate time so that there remains a physical host into which the spirit of the new era can incorporate. And I'll address this in detail at the conclusion of this three-part presentation. In considering President Trump's disintegration of the United States, I have not overlooked that at heart he is anti-Black, a white supremacist, is anti-Muslim, and anti-Hispanic immigrant. In fact, his anti-Black white supremacy served as the cornerstone upon which he built his candidacy. To this cornerstone, he would add anti-Mexican immigrant and anti-Muslim rhetoric, promising to institute programs and policies to rid the nation of these undesirables in efforts to conserve white rule and dominion, the mission for which he was elected. I discussed this in part 2 of this video. If you have found this video instructive and enlightening, I ask that you share it with at least 5 people. At this fourth stage, it is required of us that we become conscious that we are in the midst of a major planetary transition, and that this fourth stage is the turning point in the 7-stage divine intervention operating to reconfigure a new earth, recreate a new people, and reorder human society. Our awareness is required so that we begin to see Source at work, and seeing it, understand it, and align to it in order to eventually take our place as co-creators in its cleansing and recreation of a new planet and a new world reflecting its will. To position ourselves thus, first, gain an understanding of the materials I present. To do so, study the materials. It may be better to gather a group to view my videos and then to discuss each video and verify the truth of what I present. You may also ask questions of me in the comment section or contact me through the email listed below. Again, spread the word. Remember, we are to be aware. We are to be conscious participants. This is critical. This is required. Please do your part so that we meet our obligation and may all proceed to work with the law to manifest the kingdom of heaven on earth. I also ask that you support this work by contributing to its production. I have demonstrated the accuracy of the law and its power, and it will become even more startling and evident in part 2. This is clearly the work of Source. Clearly the work of Source. You can send your contributions to my PayPal account, paypal.me/ZS3. The account is also listed under the video. The purpose of the disintegration is to provide a vehicle for rebirth, a vehicle through which a new world will be realized. Recall the 7-stage transition is a process of creation, which brings the question, what specifically is Source creating?